I suspected my wife was planning a divorce, so I moved my assets 2 weeks later. She filed, then backtracked. When her plan backfired, I had always believed in trust in marriage. I had always thought that years of shared life, building a home, raising kids, making plans for the future meant that we were partners in every sense of the word. But over the last several months, I began to notice things that did not add up. Small inconsistencies, subtle changes in behavior, unexplained late nights with vague excuses for work calls, and the way she seemed to avoid questions about money. It started with a gnawing feeling in my gut, a whisper in the back of my mind that maybe she was planning something I had not anticipated. I tried to ignore it, at first convincing myself that I was being paranoid, that love meant trust and love meant security, but the feeling persisted. I could not shake it, and over time it grew into a certainty that something was wrong. I began paying closer attention to her habits, the way she handled her phone, the way she spent weekends running errands without me, the subtle but repeated questions about transferring money for projects that were never explained. Clearly, I listened to conversations that she thought I wasn't at. I reviewed financial statements and noticed small transfers she had made into accounts I had never seen, questions she gave vague answers to, and it clicked. I realized that she was planning a divorce, and she had been preparing for months or maybe years. I thought about what that meant for me, for our children, for the life we had built together. I realized I had to act quickly. I had to protect myself legally and financially. I consulted a lawyer, quietly, someone I trusted, and explained the situation. I did not accuse her because I had no proof, only intuition and observations, but I wanted to understand my options and make sure I was protected. I learned that legally I could move my assets within the framework of the law in ways that would keep them secure and above board. I began planning every step I would take, slowly, carefully, consulting my accountant and legal advisors, making sure that every transfer and every move was done in compliance with the law. I felt a mixture of emotions: relief that I had the means to protect myself, sadness that it had come to this, anger that someone I had loved and trusted could plan behind my back, and a strange sense of resolve. I began moving assets 2 weeks before she filed, everything in my name, where it would be safe, where she would not be able to claim it. And I did it quietly, methodically, avoiding any confrontation. I continued to act normally around her. I kept up appearances, going to work, preparing meals, spending time with the kids, talking about future plans, laughing at jokes. I did not show my worry, I did not show my suspicion, because I needed her to remain unaware that I knew what was coming. I watched her closely, noting her expressions, the way she talked about money, the slight unease in her voice, and I realized she was confident that she was ahead in her plan, but she had miscalculated. She had assumed I had no awareness. She had assumed I would trust blindly, as I always had. Then 2 weeks later, she filed for divorce, and the papers arrived at my office, and for a moment, I felt the sting of betrayal, like a cold hand pressing on my chest, but I also felt calm because I had anticipated this moment. I read every line carefully, noting what she had requested, how she had calculated her claims, assuming my finances were unchanged. She had overlooked the transfers I had made. She had misjudged my awareness, and suddenly the advantage she had believed she held slipped from her hands. I realized that her plan was unraveling even before the court date. She had acted in haste, based on assumptions that were no longer valid, and the sense of power that she had held over me for months began to dissipate. I met her in the lawyer's office. She was nervous, fidgeting, attempting to act confident, but I could see through it. She tried to maintain composure, but the moment I explained the steps I had taken, she realized her calculations were wrong. Her plan had backfired. She tried to backtrack, revising her claims, adjusting her expectations, trying to negotiate fairness to avoid embarrassment. But I remained calm, explaining to her that I had acted to protect myself legally, not out of revenge, and that trust and communication were essential in any marriage, and that deception had consequences. She looked at me as if seeing me for the first time, as if the person she had underestimated had been quietly planning all along and was fully prepared to act when necessary. At that moment, I understood that this was more than a legal battle. It was a lesson in awareness, in trust, in instinct, in the importance of protecting oneself while maintaining integrity. I felt a sense of relief because I had acted decisively. I had safeguarded my assets. I had ensured that I would not be blindsided, and I had learned that paying attention to subtle changes in behavior and trusting intuition could prevent a major disaster. I walked away from that office not with gloating or revenge, but with clarity, knowing that I had handled the situation responsibly and strategically. I realized that marriage is not just about love, it is also about mutual respect, trust, and awareness that life can change quickly and that assumptions about people can be dangerous. I had seen a side of her that I had not anticipated, a side that was willing to plan secretly and assume advantage, and I had responded with prudence and foresight, and now the balance had shifted. The person who thought she had control was forced to face reality, and I felt a quiet satisfaction, not from triumph over her, but from knowing that I had acted wisely, and that I could move forward with confidence and clarity. When the court date arrived, she walked in with the air of confidence she had worn for weeks, a smile on her face, as if she was about to claim a victory. She believed I had no awareness. She believed she had carefully calculated every detail, and she had underestimated me completely. I stayed calm, sat quietly, observing every movement, every glance, every whispered conversation with her lawyer. I could see the tension in her posture that she tried to mask with the practiced smile. She thought she had control, but she did not. The hearing began, and her lawyer presented the case, outlining her requests, describing assets she believed she had a claim to, and I listened carefully without interruption, noting the way assumptions were made, the way she had overlooked transfers I had legally executed, the way she had miscalculated her advantage. She spoke with precision, with confidence, with certainty, and I remained calm, silently knowing that the advantage she assumed she held had already vanished, and that reality would soon confront her when my lawyer presented the documents detailing my actions. Her confidence wavered. She attempted to speak over the details, attempting to correct mistakes, but the court required exact facts. The judge reviewed the paperwork carefully, the account statements, the transfers, the valuations, and then spoke the words that changed everything. The judge explained to her that the assets she claimed were no longer under the assumptions she had made, and that my proactive legal moves had ensured that she could not claim what she had planned, for she looked pale, almost unable to speak, her strategy crumbling before her eyes. The room was silent except for the formal voice of the judge and the subtle rustle of papers. Her eyes met mine for the first time, with genuine fear mixed with disbelief. She had underestimated me. She had assumed ignorance and trust would protect her plan, but in reality, my vigilance and foresight had neutralized her advantage. She tried to backtrack, pleading with her lawyer to revise claims, to adjust calculations, to make the situation appear fair, but the reality was clear. The advantage had shifted, and I remained composed, explaining calmly that I had acted legally, responsibly, and that, while I regretted the situation, I could not ignore the potential harm that deception could have caused. The judge allowed her to revise the filing. She agreed to fairness. She accepted that her plan had failed. She tried to justify her actions, explaining that she had feared financial instability, that she had acted out of concern, but the words sounded hollow. Even to her, I remained silent, observing the transformation, the realization, the acknowledgement that she had miscalculated and that her assumptions had consequences. The person who thought she had full control was now confronted with the reality of her misjudgment, and I felt neither triumph nor vindictiveness, only relief that I had protected myself legally and emotionally. After the hearing, we walked out separately. I reflected on everything: the weeks of observation, the planning, the moving of assets, the anticipation, the emotional preparation. I realized that trust in marriage is vital, but awareness of reality is equally essential, that love is important, but foresight can prevent catastrophe, that instinct matters, and that ignoring subtle signs can be dangerous. I felt a deep respect for my own ability to act decisively, calmly, responsibly. I realized that marriage is more than affection. It is partnership, vigilance, communication, and the courage to act when necessary. In the days following the divorce, we finalized arrangements quietly, fairly, without theatrics or public drama. The assets were protected, the children were settled, the house remained a home, not a battleground, and I felt clarity, I felt confidence, I felt freedom. I had acted decisively, without malice, without revenge, and I had ensured that years of work were safeguarded. I understood that preparation and awareness are as important as love in any relationship, that sometimes foresight is the only shield against betrayal, and that quiet action can prevent catastrophic consequences. I also reflected on human nature, the way people assume ignorance, the way overconfidence can blind a person, the way deception, even small or seemingly harmless deception, can unravel plans. I understood that careful observation and trust in intuition are tools that protect not just finances but dignity, emotions, and long-term stability, that awareness and courage to act decisively are not cruel but necessary, and that sometimes the greatest victories are internal, the sense of clarity, responsibility, and self-respect that come from knowing you have done the right thing. I moved forward with a renewed sense of self-confidence, awareness, and vigilance. I rebuilt routines with mindfulness. I invested in my personal growth and career, knowing that trust must be earned every day and that awareness is a lifelong skill. I shared moments with the children with attention and patience, ensuring that love and stability remained constant even amid change. I understood that while love is fragile, responsibility is enduring, that instinct is often wiser than blind faith, and that foresight can prevent heartbreak. Always trust your instincts. Pay attention to subtle signs. Protect yourself emotionally and financially. Prepare for the unexpected, and never underestimate the importance of awareness, even in love relationships. If you were in a situation where you suspected betrayal, would you act to protect yourself or trust blindly? If you have gone through something like this, comment your story below, and if you enjoy these types of dramatic real-life stories, then like, subscribe, and share with your friends.